At this point, I'd like to take a moment to go through the slight tweaks and changes I make from the default version of Blender that I think is going to help us here. Let's start with auto depth, and what this is all about is, if I just demonstrate the behavior without it on first of all, if I'm trying to rotate around this cube that I've got in the foreground, there's no real problem with it because I've just sort of framed up on it by hitting the period or full stop on the numpad, just like that. And if I want to now work on this cube in the background that I have embedded over there, it's very tricky to sort of zoom into there. In fact, I've actually stopped. I've sort of been locked and can't go any further. And this happens in a lot of 3D programs. The best way normally to get over there is to hit that period on the numpad, just to basically frame up into it, just to view the selected. And now we can sort of rotate around that nice and easily, but we can't get back over to this one without again selecting and then zooming back into it with the period on the numpad. This is what this auto perspective option is all about. We can launch our user preferences with Control Alt and U, and then we can find under the interface, under the view manipulation, we have auto depth, and I'm just going to enable that. And now what that means is if we try to now zoom over to this one, so we can still rotate around this one, this is fine. And if we try and take a look at what's going over here, we can now pan a lot more easily because it recognizes the distance underneath the cursor. And now if I try to zoom in, you can sort of see that we can basically easily zoom back in, and now it's starting to sort of slow down the responsiveness of the zoom as I get near to what I'm trying to manipulate. So again, I find it kind of much easier to sort of navigate through, and I haven't had to zoom into anything. The next thing I'd like to change is the way in which we can swap between various different camera viewing angles. So for example, if we press number 1 on the numpad, we can switch to our front view, and this is a front perspective. And if we actually go to bring up our user preferences again with Control Alt and U, and let's see if we enable our auto perspective there, basically this means that if I was to press 1 on the numpad again, you can see it's actually assumed that what we want is an orthographic view, and usually for me at least that's true, so I'll have that option enabled. So if we press 7 to go to top view, this is an orthographic view, and if we just start to rotate out of this view, it snaps us into a perspective view without having to press the 5 on the numpad to toggle it. We can still of course press 5 to toggle if that isn't what we want at that point, but for me I find that it reduces an extra couple of key presses that I would almost always be making otherwise without that option on. The next thing I'd like to talk about are the add-ons. So if we just again launch our user preferences with Control Alt and U, and we come over to the add-ons tab, we can see these are a bunch of sort of mini programs, if you like, which extends Blender's functionality. And in particular, the one I'm looking for now is the layer management, which happens to be the 4th one down in this case. Basically what we're looking at here is on the left hand side there's some filters, so it's initially divided up into supported level. So these are official add-ons, these are ones developed by the community, and these are ones considered to be in testing stage which aren't showing right now. Or if we shift selected that one, we would have those included in what is showing up on our right hand side. And then a little bit lower we have categories, and this is showing all categories, but you could sort of filter them down to ones just to show the 3D view related add-ons if you like. And as I say, the one we want is the layer management. But if we open this up, we can get a little bit more information about it. And in particular, what might be quite important for us is to see a link to the documentation, or to see the where this will show up basically. So we want the location, and we'll find it in the tool shelf, and it will be under a layers tab. So all we need to do is just enable it by checking the icon on the right hand side, and then that's that. We can just close. So if we press T to bring up our tool shelf, we can see, if we take a look on our tabs at the bottom now, we have this layers tab. And if we just pull this out a little bit more by left clicking and dragging it out where the border of the tool shelf is, and then just click on the down arrow for the layer management, we can basically see that what this is going to do is it's just going to represent all the layers in our scene, and the layers are actually found elsewhere by default, which is in the header of the 3D view, and we can see the 20 layers that we've got at our disposal there. Now the necessity I feel for this add-on is just to give us some description to our various different layers. So it's very easy to forget where we were when we're coming back to an old file. But in this case, we can say this is where we put our main items in the scene or something like that. We've got a few extra options here to be able to clean things up by just hiding the empty layers, for example. So that's an add-on that I would recommend having enabled, and definitely encourage you to go through there and see what else you might find is a cool addition. One more thing to tweak in our user preferences, so again Control-Alt-U, is in the final tab, the System tab, and this is the VBOs. So I'm just going to enable that option, and basically this means that we'll get much smoother viewport performance once the poly counts really start to rise. And it's not on by default, simply due to incompatibility with some older graphics cards, but in most cases it should work okay. So I'm just going to enable that, and then once we've made all our preferences, if we want to be able to save them so that the next time we open Blender it's remembered all of that, we want to come down to here where it says Save User Settings, and then just click Save User Settings, and then we can just close our user preferences.